So I'm going to pick up where I left off, but I want to point out a couple of things. I redid this so it was a little neater. So I have my initials, my period, and my star. Obviously it's different for period too. And I also wanted to point out that I used a cookie cutter. It's actually about 3.5 inches. It's not quite 4. But you can use things like, I don't know, this was just a little tin, a bin thing I had sitting around, or you could use the bottom of your water bottle to trace. You could use a mug. I had these disinfecting wipes sitting around. You could use the bottom or the top of this to trace around it. You could also do an oval, but make sure it's not much bigger than this. This is about 3.5 inches by 5 inches. That's the biggest base you want. An oval's fine. Most of us will do a circle. That's the easiest thing. So I have my slip and I am scoring my base. Go in a little bit. And when you build with coils, you'll basically have some prepared and then you'll build, and then you'll prepare more and build more, etc. And that's kind of how it will go. So I've scored my pot, and I am now, my slip seems a little goopy, a little dry actually, but that's okay. You can always add water to it and mix it up. If it's too dry, you have to remake it, reconstitute it. And we're gonna leave this down as much as possible now, try not to lift it up. And basically cover the pot with a big kind of smear of, remember, we're not getting rid of our marks. We're just sort of placing the slip on. If I had a bigger paintbrush or a slip that was a little more liquidy, it would go a little smoother. Because you do want a relatively even layer. Okay, so I have my first coil prepared here, and this is a pretty long one. It might make it all the way around, and it might not, so we'll see. So my coil also needs to be scored. It doesn't need to be slipped because it is plastic, and then it'll be hard to hold. So as long as you have some marks in it, you're good to go. As I'm putting this on, I'm giving it a little pressure, and I'm also lining it up right to the edge, which I'll show you in a moment. So when you get to the point where it meets, you're going to take your knife and you're going to cut a piece off. And remember, you can always use this again. So have your plastic bag handy so you can keep that either in your plastic bag, or I have this other plastic here holding some of my pieces that are ready so they don't get dry as I work. So you have your very first coil down. You're pressing it a little bit, not to deform it, but to press it so it is nice and snug. And just so you can see, it is on the edge there. And you can go, we will do this more when we clean up the whole pot, but just so you know, you can go in and put some slip in. You're not gonna do this every single time, maybe a few layers, because you don't wanna handle it too much. And you also don't want it to get really wet and soggy, and then it's hard to hold the other coils. So the next thing I'm going to do is show you, I would likely do a couple layers, at least one of a regular coil, because that'll make it nice and strong. You can start to smooth out this inside. You can use your finger to smooth out the inside and sort of seal that area. But again, we don't want it to get goopy and really wet. So we want this to stay pretty plastic and not shiny. So just a little bit. We'll clean that up a little bit later. So I wanted to show you if I decided that I was going to use these little bits next, every single one I use is going to be scored and slipped. So I'm going to put a little slip on here. I'm going to build with them actually sideways. So maybe like this and like this. And you can prepare, you know, more than one at a time. You could do a few. So I'm doing that. And that, and then your piece needs to be scored. And you do, you know, you definitely want to add enough slip that you are feeling like it has a good glue. And also in between where they're going to touch. Anytime clay is going to go together, you want to add slip. So this in between piece as well. I could have decided maybe to put a little sphere in there. That would have been interesting, actually. I think I'll do that. I will put a little ball in there. I think that would be a better pattern. But again, I need to make sure that everything is ready. So there we go. I'm going to give it a little pressure. And there we go. I'll go all the way around. Again, don't handle this much. I'm just doing this to show you. And then it would create a pattern all the way around. And then I'll build my next layer.